In a wonderful day in the Lord broadcast, we are returning back to the book of Deuteronomy now. We've been taking a side trip into the book of Psalms for a while. We're going to come back to Deuteronomy and look at this narrative. Deuteronomy means second law. And the laws, there's not a second law given, but this is a reminder of what the Lord gave them originally. So we have to look at the context. The people of Israel in verse 1 of chapter 1, these are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel across the Jordan in the wilderness. So now we're right on the banks of the Jordan River. The people have been wandering around since the Exodus for 40 years, and they're about ready to go into the promised land. Now Moses is not going to go with them because of his sin at Meribah. The Lord is not going to allow him to enter the land, but he's going to remind this generation of what the Lord has given them. So the law was originally given on Mount Sinai or Mount Horeb to the people of Israel almost 40 years before. And then it was verse 2 is an 11-day journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. So they have an 11-day journey from Mount Sinai or Horeb to Kadesh Barnea, which is just a stone's throw away from the promised land. They're there. They're ready to go when all things fall apart. So that was the Exodus generation. That was the group of people that left Egypt and went into the wilderness because they rebelled against God, refused to follow him. They lose out on going into the land. So now we have a new generation who is raised up. All these people none of them are older than 60. So everybody under 20 had passed away, at least all the fighting men had passed away during this time. And so this generation here is no older than 60. So we're going to call them the Conquest generation. They're going to go into the land of promise, and they're going to conquer the land that God had promised to give them. This group needed to be reminded now of what God had given them on the Ten Commandments and the other laws that have been fleshed out in the books of Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. So this is a second giving of the law, more or less, and Moses is expounding on that law to these people. As he does that, in this fresh reminder, he wants to review to them where they have been. Chapter 1, as a matter of fact, the book of Deuteronomy is made up of 5 speeches or 5 sermons. And so we can divide it up that way. The first one is chapter 1, verse 5, through chapter 4, verse 43. And this is a review of where they have been, their travels in the land of the wilderness. And so there, as we talked about Kadesh Barnea here, they could have gone into the land, and they did not. In chapter 1, verse 26, we see it's because of the rebellion. It says, "Yet you were not willing to go up, but rebelled against the command of the Lord your God." So why they didn't go up was because of their defiance against God. Verse 32 says, "But for all this, you did not trust the Lord your God." All that God did at the Exodus, all the miracles in Egypt, all the manna and everything else he did in the wilderness, giving of the Ten Commandments, still they did not trust him. And therefore he said in verse 35, "Not one of these men, this evil generation, will see the good land." So all the older fighting men passed away as a result of that. Now we're 38 years later after that, and they are ready now to go back into the land. We move over beyond the wanderings. And then verse 14 of chapter 2, "Now the time that it took for us to come from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed over to the brook Zereth was 38 years. Isn't that amazing? It took them 11 days to get to Kadesh Barnea, 38 years to cross over, because of the rebellion. Moses himself was but there was some good things I would mention. Moses is not allowed to go into the land, but while they're on the west side or the east side of the river, they do conquer 2 nations. The Og, chapter 3, verse 1 of Bashan, and Sihon also in chapter 2, verse 32. They conquer these 2 nations, and that is important because 2.5 tribes of Israel are going to stay on that east side of the river. Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh are going to stay on that side of the river. They will not possess land on the east side, as was the original intent. So they had to conquer these nations first, and they've done so, and that is where we're at now as we come to chapter 4, with the mention that Moses is not allowed to go up into the land, but in chapter 3, verse 27, he's allowed to go on the mountain to view the land, but not allowed to enter. And that leads us to chapter 4 that we'll look at tomorrow.